Hi everyone, this is Ekaterina, and in my channel I'm documenting my journey of becoming a counselor. This week we'll be covering the last topic of the Unit 3 in the Level 2 Certificate in Counseling Skills, and we'll be talking about discrimination. Now, I'm sure that this is a topic that everyone is pretty much familiar with, but nonetheless, for anyone who wishes to become a skilled helper, a counselor or a therapist, it's still very important to understand discrimination, be able to identify it, make sure that they don't apply discrimination when they see their own clients, and most importantly, know how to support the clients who are struggling with discrimination in their life. So I am very happy that we've covered this topic in more detail, and I'm sure this will come back maybe in level 3, level 4, level 5, maybe on a bit deeper level. So what is discrimination? Well, generally we would describe it as an unfair treatment of a group of people based on specific characteristics. For example, based on their age or religion or race. And I'm quite sure people can come up with lots of negative examples of discrimination. Let's say somebody not getting a promotion because they're a woman, or even different sentence times for criminals from different ethnical backgrounds. But there's also cases of positive discrimination, and I think those are the ones that people maybe don't notice as much, and this is also maybe something that is not talked about as much. And here, for example, sometimes we would actually try to now act more favorable towards a group of people that previously has been discriminated. But as a default, we would then almost discriminate against other people. Now, I understand that this is a very sensitive topic and it's really hard to find that balance. However, nonetheless, whenever we're talking about a different treatment of people of specific, again, age, race, nationality, we are in a way talking about discrimination, whether that treatment is positive or negative. And I try to think of a personal example of positive discrimination. Again, as I said, this is something that perhaps we don't notice as much. And the only one I could come up with is something that occurred to me in the last few months. So when I moved into the new house, we had problems with our heating. So we called somebody from British Gas to have a look. And we had 2 engineers. They came for a couple of days, work on our boiler, and then they left saying that everything was sorted. Now, within 2 hours of them leaving, the boiler stopped working and the whole house lost heating. And I've called British Gas and asked if they could send somebody back just to have a look on this issue because we were not certain if this was caused by their own engineers or because our boiler was failing. And what happened at the time, so this was February, is that British Gas didn't have enough engineers, so they told us that we'll have to wait for 1 month for our next appointment, and the only way they could support us faster was if we had some sort of problems that would put us into the risk group. Let's say we've just came out of surgery and we were recovering, or we had some other problems with our health or disabilities. And in a way, I would say I understood where they were coming from. Certainly they needed to support most vulnerable people in this area. However, at the same time, I had to confess to them that I didn't have anything and I wouldn't lie about having it just to get, better service. However, it still felt a bit unfair knowing that just because we were physically fit, it meant that we could wait for 1 month for an engineer in a cold house. So we found other ways of resolving the situation, but at the same time, it still felt a bit wrong. And yeah, obviously cannot do anything about the lack of engineers, but in my mind, that would almost fall into the positive discrimination, because instead of maybe checking if they had engineers available, they had a reserve of engineers they would never contact because they were always booked for potentially vulnerable clients, even though they might not call that day or next day, but we would just not be able to access those engineers because we were healthy and fit. So anyway, this is my example of a positive discrimination. I might be not right here, but if you have better examples, please share them in comments and I would love to hear from you all. So in the previous video, I also talk about labeling, prejudice, and stereotypes. And even though they're quite interlinked and similar to discrimination, but there's also some key differences. And in fact, what we can say is that discrimination is prejudice in action. What makes discrimination also different is the fact that it is actually regulated. So in UK, we have a so-called document, the Equality Act. It was created in 2010, and it is one of the biggest anti-discrimination legislation UK has known so far. So obviously there is similar legislation probably published in other countries, but for now I'll be just referring to the Equality Act from 2010. And in this document, they list 9 protected characteristics. So those specific characteristics that people could be discriminated against. And we're talking about race, age, sex, disability, marriage or civil partnership, pregnancy or maternity, religion or other beliefs, sexual orientation, and gender reassignment. So that will be, cannot count. So that will be 9 protected characteristics. And in UK, thanks to this Equality Act, we are protected in workplace, in education, as customers, when using public services, and even when just renting or buying, selling properties. So in all those areas, if somebody tries to discriminate a person due to one of those specific characteristics, this could be an actual legal case on the grounds of discrimination. And finally, I wanted to share with you something new that I learned in this course, and it is the fact that discrimination can be direct or indirect. And I think in most of the cases when we hear about discrimination on social media, we're actually talking about direct discrimination. For example, somebody not getting a job because of the gender, age, or even sexual orientation. But in fact, there are many more other examples of indirect discrimination that is constantly happening around us, but we sometimes fail to notice. And what indirect discrimination is when an organization or a community or even government set up the rules that not everyone can comply with because of their special characteristics. So let's say we have a supermarket and they wish for all their female employees to wear dresses. Well, that seems to be like a normal dress code policy. However, some people might not be able to wear dresses because of their religious beliefs. So again, even though it was not directly discriminative, however, some people will feel uncomfortable applying for the jobs in the supermarket, knowing that they will not able to follow the dress code, or even the employees who already work there, they might feel a bit uncomfortable even wearing trousers. So that's a good example. And also in cases that maybe a new government building is been built and nobody thought of putting special access for people with disabilities. That's also an example of indirect discrimination, because even though it wasn't done on purpose, sometimes it really happens just because of human mistakes. But in a way, we're limiting access to this building, those premises, to people with disabilities. So that will be another case of indirect discrimination. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Next week I'll be talking about the practical sessions, because similar to Unit 1, we had another set of sessions in the Unit 3. Again, we split into little groups whereby we had people playing the role of a counselor, a client, and an observer. And then we also shared our feedbacks on each other. So I will talk about my personal reflections, where I've improved, what sort of challenges I had to face. And I think you might find it quite interesting. And later on, I would like to also cover quickly the assignments I had to write in Unit 3. Again, some of the viewers might be interested in doing a very similar study program, so I'll just go over those assignments very quickly so that we can finally close the Unit 3 and progress to the Unit 4. But for now, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please remember to follow the channel, like the videos, and also leave your comments. But most importantly, take good care of yourself. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.